Hello students, this is Mr. Ross. I will not be at school today, but I know you guys are going to pay attention to the videos I made because you're great students and you're going to learn material in the videos. Even though the videos are about 10 minutes long, you're going to focus on them and learn everything there is to know because you want to do well on the test you're going to take in the coming days. Most likely to top it next week since we're going to miss a couple of days this week. So let's get started on learning material. Today's mission is to be able to find the average rate of change over an interval. So at the end of the lesson, you should be able to do this. You should be able to take one of these pictures like this, where I have a quadratic here. I'm going to make this a little bigger. And you should be able to take this picture, find two coordinates on that quadratic, on that parabola, and then find the slope between those two coordinates. And that's the average rate of change. So that's one of our missions, to find out where the average rate of change is. Another mission is this. You're going to determine the interval where the parabola has negative y values. So basically, I'm going to give you a graph like this. And I'm going to make this bigger as well. And you're going to be looking for where that graph has negative y values, which essentially is right here. I'll make that look even better by putting in a different screen. And finding an interval where the y values are negative is really easy. So I'm going to tell you now. It's essentially where the y values, where the graph goes to the negative side of the y-axis. So all these numbers below this x-axis here are negative values for y. So the interval starts with this x value and that x value. That looks to be -1 and that looks to be +2. So the interval where it's below the x-axis, we say this is the interval from -1 to 2. I'm going to put soft brackets here because on the x-axis, soft brackets, because on the x-axis is 0. It's not really negative yet. So we say it's just past -1 and just before you get to 2. So that's the interval where it's negative. So I'll give you a graph like that in the future on the test. You're just looking for where the parabola goes below the x-axis. And also on the test, be sure you just know you can use Desmos anytime you want. You can graph any of these equations with Desmos. All right, let's talk about what you already know. What you already learned was I could give you expressions like this, and you can multiply them together. I use 4, where you multiply these two things together. Just know you write it twice and then multiply them together. We've also learned how to multiply expressions like these. So we did this early on. We also know how to factor expressions like these. When the number in front of m squared is 1, we factor those. And then we start factoring when the number n squared wasn't 1, where we take the 2 and you multiply it to the back. And then we look at some at GCFs all the way through. And then you factor out the GCF before you go to factoring. And then we talk about problems like these, where it was in factored form, and you say each factor equal to 0. We also talk about problems like these, where it was not equal to 0, but you should get it equal to 0 first by subtracting the 6 over, and then go by factoring it, and then come up with two binomials like this and so forth. The last thing that you learned for me was the difference of squares. I gave you a polynomial like this, and you learned to factor it. Chances are you can look at it and tell right now what the factors are. You should know it's going to be 11n plus 5, 11n subtract 5. Because if you square root those numbers, you get 11 and 5. So it'd be plus and minus sign between those. And one thing I did not teach you yet, but it's going to be left for you to figure out later on, or on the test, is this. You'll be tested on a problem like this. I'm going to give you this side, which we know is the difference of squares. And you have to know how to factor the difference of squares. And you should know that this factors to be 3n plus 2, 3n subtract 2. And because it's equal to 0, you should know to set those equal to 0. So 3n plus 2 equals 0, and you solve it, and you get x equals to -2 over 3, and 3x subtract 2 equals 0, and you solve it, and you get x equals to 2 over 3. Now, I haven't given you any practice like that in class, but hope you can take what you know about factoring and what you know about solving equations and put those two things together to solve that equation when you see it again on the test or on the study guide. All right, with that said, that's all I have as a preview of the day's lesson. If you go back to the eClass page, you will see the next video, and the next video explains the first topic, which was finding the average rate of change over an interval. That's all I have for now, and continue to the next video.